Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about tonsils. Tonsils are mucosa associated lymphoid tissue present at the beginning of the respiratory and the digestive tracts, uh, and they are formed by the pharyngeal, tubal, lingual and palatine tonsils, which are placed like a ring at the beginning of the pharynx, also called as circumpharyngeal ring of Waldes. The enlargement of the one of the component of the tonsils occurs because of the recurrent inflammation and infection, and that can be a major cause of upper airway obstruction and obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, which are mostly seen in the children. I am Dr. Anita Mahajan from Department of Anatomy, Maulana Azad Medical College, and we are going to talk about the various components of the tonsils today. Learning objectives of today's class are: describe the components and functions of the Waldes lymphatic ring, describe the morphology, relations, blood supply and applied anatomy of palatine tonsils, describe the anatomical basis of tonsillitis, tonsillectomy, adenoid and peritonsillar abscess. To understand the significance of studying anatomy of the various components of the tonsils, let's see a case in which a 9-year-old girl attended pediatrics OPD for complaints of pain in the throat and fever. Parents informed that she gets these episodes frequently. On oral examination, enlarged and inflamed lymphoid tissue was observed in the oral cavity between the palatoglossal and the palatopharyngeal arch. Enlarged lymph nodes were palpated in the cervical region just behind the angle of mandible. So let's see the anatomy of tonsils, and we'll try to understand the anatomical basis of the symptoms which are here, which are causing these symptoms. Tonsils, as I have said, these are the circular band of mucosa associated lymphatic tissue present around the beginning of the respiratory and digestive tracts. Here, the various the components of the Waldes rings or the circumpharyngeal lymphatic tissue is the pharyngeal, tubal, palatine, and lingual tonsils. And these they act as a secondary lymphoid tissue, and they play a significant role in immune defense mechanism at the beginning of the aerodigestive tract. Let's see what are the components here in this picture. One can see this is the nasopharyngeal tonsil. This is present in the midline in nasopharynx. Then tubal tonsils on the posterior superior edge of the opening of pharyngotympanic tube. The tubal tonsils are present under the mucosa. So they are bilateral. So this set is present in the nasopharynx. Whereas in oropharynx, in the tonsillar sinus or the fossa, we have palatine tonsils. These palatine tonsils are bilateral, and then the posterior 1/3 of the tongue has got the lymphoid tissue under the mucosa, that is called as the lingual tonsil. So there are two paired and two single lymphoid organ, one in the nasopharynx and one in the oropharynx. So total there are 6 lymphoid tissue. 3 are present in the nasopharyngeal area, 3 are present in the oropharyngeal area. Here one can see the roof and the posterior aspect of the nasopharynx has this pharyngeal tonsil. Then around the tube is the tubal tonsil. Then the tonsils, which are the palatine tonsil and the lingual tonsil. Pharyngeal tonsil is the mucosa associated lymphatic tissue present in the nasopharynx in the midline. Here in this picture one can appreciate along its roof and the posterior wall. So this is nasopharynx, posterior ends of the turbinates seen over here, the soft palate, the posterior wall of the nasopharynx formed by the arch of atlas and the dens of the axis, the sphenoid and the occipital bone, the inferior surface. So this is adenoid, this is the location along the roof and the posterior wall of the nasopharynx in midline. The fully formed adenoid or the pharyngeal tonsil has the shape of truncated pyramid. If I have to make picture, a diagram to show you the location, this is the floor of the anterior cranial fossa, and one can make it like this, the sella turcica here. This is the space where the pituitary is going to be present, and here is the sphenoidal air sinus. You can make the posterior ends of the turbinates here, the hard palate and soft palate here. The arch of atlas section as seen in this picture, and this is the triangular opening of the pharyngotympanic tube, also called as auditory tube or eustachian tube. So the pharyngeal tonsils are present along this area. Okay. So this is the free surface. This surface is the free surface which I am drawing right now, and this is the base of the pharyngeal tonsil. It is lined by the major portion is going to be lined by the respiratory epithelium, but at places or patches of the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium can be found. There is a midline recess extending deeper into the substance. This is called as the median recess or median cleft or the pharyngeal bursa. The space which is extending deeper is called as pharyngeal bursa, and it indicates that it represents the rostral end of the embryonic notochord. Then here the other rest of the free surface, again it is thrown into folds. When this pharyngeal tonsil it is enlarged, then in that case the direction of enlargement would be this. So it is going to either compress upon the opening of the tympanic, the pharyngotympanic tube, or it can block the nasal passage, the posterior nasal area. This can be blocked by the enlarged adenoids. So what are the symptoms? Suppose the posterior end of the nasal cavity is blocked by the adenoid. What will happen? The child starts breathing through mouth. So this is the posterior end of the tongue. So child start breathing through mouths. Because of the mouth breathing, there is a dryness of mouth here. Okay, mouth breathing and dryness, that is one symptoms. Because of the blockage of the pharyngotympanic tube, there occur recurrent middle ear infection. Recurrent middle ear infection because the tube is blocked. So the air which is present in the middle ear cavity gets sucked in or get absorbed, and there occur secretion of the fluid, and that leads to serous kind of otitis media. And when this get infected, it can lead to the otitis media also. Adenoid facies, this will form if the adenoid or the enlarged pharyngeal tonsil they remain untreated for longer time. So in that case, because of the regular continuous mouth breathing, the tongue is not able to the relationship between the hard palate and the tongue is not normal, because the pressure of the tongue helps in proper development of the proper curvature of the hard palate. So if it is not there, and because of that the front teeth they are inclined forward, and that leads to formation of adenoid facies. Okay, so there is a slight uh, the forward inclined teeth are there in the adenoid facies. The treatment of this is the adenoidectomy. That means by the suction diathermy, this tissue is removed and it has rich blood supply. It is supplied by the uh, branches of the ascending pharyngeal artery, branches of the ascending palatine artery. There are branches from the maxillary artery also, the branch from the artery of pterygoid canal. One artery which should be kept in mind while removing this adenoid tissue. So there is an artery which is supplying it from the branches are supplying it from the basal part. So just one more thing here, this part of the pharyngeal tonsil, it is separated from the periosteum by a fibrous tissue layer which is called as the hemicapsule of the pharyngeal tonsil. Okay, so we were talking about the basis sphenoid branches of the basis sphenoid artery which are supplying it from the base. So when we are removing, we have to take care of these arteries. They should be properly ligated and cauterized to prevent the post adenoidectomy bleeding. So that is about the pharyngeal tonsil or the adenoids. When they are enlarged and inflamed, called as adenoid. Let's see the tonsils, which are the palatine tonsils. Whenever we are saying tonsils in general, then actually we are referring to the palatine tonsils, which are paired ovoid mass of tissue present in the posterior part of the oral cavity. Here, when we open mouth, then this is the posterior part of the oral cavity, the dorsum of tongue here, the soft palate, uvula, the soft palate and uvula over here. So in this, here we can appreciate there are two mucosal foldings placed vertically. Here, these mucosal foldings actually, the underlying them, there are muscles. So they are called as the anterior and posterior pillar of the tonsillar fossa. So here tonsillar fossa, that means it is bounded by the anteriorly by the palatoglossal arch. So mucosa with the palatoglossus muscle is called as palatoglossal arch. Similarly, the posterior vertical fold of the mucous membrane with the underlying palatopharyngeus muscle is called as the palatopharyngeal arch. So this will be the posterior arch, this is anterior arch, and these two arches, when we trace it upwards, they meet at the soft palate. So this would be the apex of the tonsillar fossa, whereas at the base is formed by the posterior part of the tongue. Okay, so this is the base, this is apex, and these are the two arches making anterior and posterior boundary of the tonsillar fossa or sinus. This is the ovoid mass which is seen over here, which is called as the tonsil. Okay, so these are paired structure. Vertical dimension is approximately 2 to 2.5 centimeter, whereas horizontally it is 1 to 1.5 centimeter. It has two poles, the upper pole, lower pole. The surface, this surface which is facing the oral cavity is the medial surface, and the deeper surface which is actually facing the superior constrictor muscle is called as the lateral surface. It has two borders. Naturally, the border which is towards the palatoglossal arch, this is anterior border. The actually it is a little submerged within the anterior arch. This one is going to be meeting with the posterior arch. This is posterior border. So these are the locations and the dimensions of the tonsil, palatine tonsil. So this is sagittal section. Here we can appreciate the boundaries of the tonsillar fossa again, and we'll see what are the structures forming the tonsillar bed. So this is soft palate, hard palate. So oral cavity, this would be the pharyngeal isthmus here. So this part, this is the oral from this palatoglossal arch part behind this is oropharynx. Anterior to the palatoglossal arch is oral cavity. Okay, so we just appreciate this is palatoglossal muscle. When it is covered by the mucosa, it is called as palatoglossal arch. Similarly, here the muscle is retracted. So this is the placement of the palatopharyngeus muscle covered with the mucosa called as palatopharyngeal arch. Okay, so this triangular, this one is called as the um, tonsillar fossa, the space between the depressed triangular area between these two arches, and the lower end is formed by the base is formed by the posterior part of the tongue. So this is tonsillar fossa. Let's see. This is the tonsil, the palatoglossal arch, palatopharyngeal arch. Fine. So these are the boundaries over here. The apex by meeting of the two arches and the base formed by the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. Now see, this is the tonsil. So the surface which is facing towards the tongue, towards the oral cavity, is the medial surface, whereas the surface which is on which the tonsil is resting is called as the lateral surface or the tonsillar bed. So what all structures we can appreciate here in the tonsillar bed? Here if you see, this is the pterygomandibular raphe. So anterior muscle is the buccinator muscle, whereas posterior muscle is the superior pharyngeal constrictor muscle. So that muscle is present mostly in the posterior or the lateral aspect of the tonsil. Okay, pterygomandibular raphe, this posteriorly extending muscle which is present in the lateral wall of the tonsil, is superior constrictor muscle. So main muscle is superior constrictor muscle at the lateral in the lateral relation, covered inside by the pharyngobasilar fascia, outside by the buccopharyngeal fascia. Further outside that, in the smaller areas, we have the styloglossus muscle anteriorly, stylopharyngeus muscle. This is stylopharyngeus muscle. See, this is stylopharyngeus muscle which is entering into the pharynx from the gap between the superior constrictor and middle constrictor muscle. This is middle constrictor, this is superior constrictor. हमने इसको किया था ना, जब pharynx किया था, तो structures entering through the gaps between the various parts of the constrictor muscle. So from the gap of superior and middle constrictor, we have the entry of the stylopharyngeus muscle inside, and the ninth cranial nerve, which is glossopharyngeal nerve. So just note the positions of these structures which are making the lateral wall. We have superior constrictor muscle covered by the buccopharyngeal fascia and the pharyngobasilar fascia, respectively from outside and on inside. Then we have styloglossus muscle and stylopharyngeus muscle. In between we have the glossopharyngeal nerve that will also come in lateral relation of the tonsils. Okay. For the surface marking, if I have to put mandible on it, okay, suppose I have applied the other side of the mandible, so the tonsils are placed. This part is called as angle of mandible. This you did in the previous class. So this is the base of the mandible or the lower border of the mandible. This is the rambus. So this junction is called as the angle of mandible. So approximately 1.25 centimeter in front and above is the location of the tonsil. If you have to mark it on the surface, you will mark it somewhere here. We have made it over here. So because the I've just applied bone over here. So let's see where will be the tonsil. Somewhere here we can mark the tonsil on the surface. Okay. So this is the surface anatomy of tonsil. Let's see the relations and features of the tonsil in horizontal section which passes through the oral cavity, cutting the tonsils, cutting the palatine tonsils. Here in this section, what we can appreciate, this is the cut section of the tonsil. So because this is horizontal section, so this would be the anterior, this would be posterior. These are the posterolateral relation. So here is the lateral and then posterior relations. So this tonsil, when cut, it shows this surface, which is called as the oral surface, this surface is oral surface, this is called as the pharyngeal or lateral surface. The oral surface, the oral aspect, oral surface. So here the oral surface is lined by the mucous membrane. So I'll use this dark blue color to make the mucous membrane which is lining the oral surface, and appreciate here the oral surface has got 15 to 20 pits, which are actually the opening of the crypts which are extending deep into the substance. So this mucous membrane will also lie the palatoglossus and palatopharyngeal muscle. So palatoglossus, after lining this, will reflect onto the tongue, whereas here also the palatopharyngeal muscle is covered by the mucous membrane, and then this mucous membrane will reflect onto the pharyngeal wall. So mucous membrane with the underlying palatopharyngeus muscle is called as palatopharyngeal arch, whereas mucous membrane with the palatoglossus muscle is called as the palatoglossal arch. Here this will make the anterior pillar. This is also called as anterior pillar or anterior arch, where this is called as posterior arch, posterior tonsillar arch, posterior arch. Okay, so there are pits on the oral surface, which are the opening of the crypts. Along the wall of the crypts, we have lot of lymphoid tissue present in the substance of the tonsil. So this is the oral surface. Now the lateral surface of the tonsil is covered by the thick sheet of connective tissue, which is called as hemicapsule. So there is a capsule of the connective tissue lining the lateral aspect of the tonsil called as hemicapsule, because this is the capsule which is covering only only one aspect of the tonsil called as hemicapsule. So this is also about the oral surface and the pharyngeal surface, or you can say the medial surface and the lateral surface. So then the anterior border of the tonsil is related with the palatoglossal arch, posterior border is related with the palatopharyngeal arch. Okay, then the superior pole of the tonsil, because it is almond shaped structure with the bulging oral surface, so there is a superior pole and inferior pole also. The superior pole of the tonsil, it is in it is fitting into the uniting edges of the both arches, so that is called as actually the apex part. So and the apex lies little deeper into the substance of the soft palate. The base is in contact with the tongue. Here the lateral surface is this is hemicapsule. So it is separated from the pharyngeal wall by the layer of areolar tissue, which is called as the paratonsillar space filled with the loose areolar tissue. This is paratonsillar fossa or space. This space is important because here we have a vein which is called as the external palatine vein or the paratonsillar vein. So this vein which is there in the paratonsillar space is called as the external palatine vein, and this will drain into the facial vein or into the pharyngeal plexus of veins which are present in the posterior part of the pharynx. Here in this area we also have the nerves in the relation to the posterior pharyngeal wall called as the pharyngeal plexus of nerves. Let me write it over here. This is called as pharyngeal plexus of nerves. Pharyngeal plexus of nerve. Okay. So we have all these in lateral relation. Then if we go further laterally beyond the tonsillar fossa, will get the superior constrictor muscle, which is the superior most constrictor muscle, superior constrictor muscle in the lateral relation. Inside of the surface of the superior constrictor muscle is lined by the pharyngobasilar fascia, which I have made with the green color, and outside is lined by the buccopharyngeal fascia. So remember, buccopharyngeal fascia is bahar, B for bahar, buccopharyngeal is bahar ki taraf. Okay, then further laterally we have the facial artery running in this area. The facial artery will be running in this area, and it is giving branches, the tonsillar branches, which are going to supply the substance of the tonsil mainly from the inferior pole. And there is one branch of the facial artery which is called as the ascending palatine artery. This artery will again give tonsillar branches to the substance of the tonsil. So the ascending palatine artery will make important lateral relation with the tonsil. So apart from this, further lateral to it, we have the cut portion of the ramus of the mandible with the muscles. Externally is the masseter muscle and the medial pterygoid muscle. And this is the masseter muscle. And this is mandible. Let me just mark it. Mandible. This one is the facial artery, the paratonsillar vein draining into the facial vein, the ascending palatine artery here. Then we have a relation with the glossopharyngeal nerve in this region. This is glossopharyngeal nerve, which is related lateral to the tonsil, and it will branch and send branches to supply the tonsil. This muscle is styloglossus muscle. And the glossopharyngeal nerve lies just medial to the styloglossus muscle. Let me use black color for this. These glossopharyngeal and the styloglossus muscle. This is styloid process. The muscles over here are the stylopharyngeus and stylohyoid muscle. This muscle is stylohyoid and this one is stylopharyngeus muscle. Stylopharyngeus muscle, and this one is stylohyoid muscle. Okay, and this is styloid process. So there are further so these are structures which are related lateral to this. There are this carotid sheath which is related, actually it is 2.5 centimeter posterior and lateral to the tonsil. So it is not in direct relation, but when we make section for the sake of completion, we have made it. So that's the carotid sheath with the internal carotid artery and internal jugular vein in that. Okay, so this is the internal carotid artery and the internal jugular vein. This is internal jugular vein, IJAV, and the internal carotid artery with the vagus nerve here. Okay, so carotid sheath with its content lies 2.5 centimeter posterior and lateral to the tonsils. So now, because I have told so many lateral relation, they must be having some clinical significance. So when the in case of the recurrent tonsillitis, there can be need of removing the tonsil. The removal of the tonsil called as tonsillectomy. So when the tonsil is removed, so it should be removed like here from the tonsillar fossa. Okay, what is tonsillar fossa? Tonsillar fossa is the space which is between the posterior arch and the anterior arch. Okay, so whatever is this space is called as tonsillar sinus or tonsillar fossa. Okay, so when the tonsil is removed, so there are chances that we can damage this paratonsillar vein, which is actually taking some few tributaries from the soft palate also and running in the paratonsillar space, which in the loose connective tissue. So this can get damaged. At the same time, if the it is poorly performed tonsillectomy, then it can damage the arteries. The ascending palatine artery can also be get damaged, and this nerve get affected usually in tonsillectomy because of the post tonsillectomy edema. So because of the edema, this nerve may get compressed, and the symptoms of loss of sensation on the posterior surface of the posterior 1/3 of the tongue happens. Okay, so that is the involvement of the glossopharyngeal nerve. So ascending palatine artery, the paratonsillar vein, all these structures may get affected in tonsillectomy when performed, uh, not performed properly. So this is all about the lateral relations. So we talked about the anterior relation, which is the palatoglossal muscle with the mucous membrane, the palatoglossal arch, palatopharyngeal arch, and rest of the lateral relations. So, and I talked about the pharyngeal plexus of vein and the pharyngeal plexus of nerve also. If we take the coronal section that passes through the tonsil, in that case, this is the superior pole. Then we can label this as the, because this is the vertical section, the coronal section, so this can be called as the superior pole. So this is the superior pole of the tonsil, superior pole, and the mark, this arrow mark, is in the intratonsillar cleft, which is the one of the deepest cleft, called as the intratonsillar or crypta magna, the biggest crypt, and crypta magna. And this space over here is called as the supratonsillar space, which is actually misnomer because this is very much within the substance of tonsil. So it should not be called as supratonsillar space, but it is called as supratonsillar space. So this deeper cleft is called as intratonsillar or the crypta magna, and this is the lower pole, which is in contact with the base of the tongue. So lower pole. Again, in the lateral relation, almost similar, same lateral relations we have. We have the relation with the this superior constrictor muscle, the pharyngobasilar fascia inside, buccopharyngeal fascia outside, the cut section of the mandible with the medial pterygoid and the masseter muscle, the facial artery, the styloglossus muscle, the ninth nerve, and the branches of the artery. So this would be the styloglossus muscle. This is facial artery. Facial artery will be in the lateral relation, the ninth nerve, the mandible, the masseter, masseter हो गया, और ये हो गया medial pterygoid, medial goid. Okay, then this is the buccopharyngeal fascia, and this one is the superior constrictor muscle. Okay, so the relations are very clear. From the superior pole, it is related to the soft palate, the meeting point of two arches. This is the palatopharyngeal, and this dotted one is the palatoglossal arch, and this is the tonsillar fossa in which the tonsil is present. So the lower pole is going to be related with the basal part of the, or the dorsal posterior most part of the tongue, and these are the lateral relations. So this is the which section? This will be the coronal section. Coronal section. Okay, so this would be the oral aspect, and this is the lateral, this is superior. So I hope now the relations of the tonsils are clear to you. So let's move ahead. Let's see the arterial supply of the tonsil. As I've said, there are many branches. The tonsil has got, right now I'm saying tonsil, that means I'm referring to the palatine tonsil. So the palatine tonsil is supplied by the branches of external carotid artery, mainly the branches of the external carotid artery, and the principal artery supplying the tonsil is the facial artery. This facial artery is the major artery supplying the tonsil. Apart from that, there are branches from the ascending pharyngeal artery. This is the tonsillar branch of the ascending pharyngeal artery. The branches from the maxillary artery, it has got greater and the lesser palatine artery. They also give branches to the tonsil from the upper pole. Whereas lingual artery also supports the supply from the lower pole. So, and all these branches, mostly the branches from the facial artery, they pierce the superior constrictor muscle and enter into the substance of tonsil from the lateral aspect, piercing the hemicapsule and enters in. So these are the tonsillar branches of the lingual artery. The facial artery gives the direct tonsillar branch. Then the tonsillar branches from the ascending palatine artery. The ascending pharyngeal artery is this. This is ascending pharyngeal artery, ascending palatine artery. This is ascending pharyngeal artery giving tonsillar branches, and the tonsillar branches from the greater palatine and the lesser palatine artery. So if we have to number, this is the number 1 artery, the facial artery, the tonsillar branch, the tonsillar branch of the ascending palatine artery, then branches from the ascending pharyngeal artery, then greater palatine artery, the branches from the greater palatine artery, and the branches from the lingual artery. So remember, these are the lateral, we can just divide them into various sets here. So these arteries are supplying it from the lateral aspect, whereas lingual artery is supplying from the inferior pole, and the palatine branches, they are supplying from the superior pole. This picture is depicting the same thing. The branches from the lingual artery, branches from the facial artery, direct branch, ascending palatine branch, and then ascending pharyngeal, the tonsillar branches from the ascending pharyngeal. These are the descending palatine branches from the greater palatine artery. So this relation with the ascending palatine branch is important because it is running along the lateral surface of the tonsil. So while removing the tonsil, if the dissection goes little deeper, then this artery can be a cause of bleeding after removal of the tonsil. Okay, remember this, because they are entering by piercing the superior constrictor muscle. Let's see, where is the superior constrictor muscle? It is going to be placed here in this area. Okay, the superior constrictor muscle would be like this. It would be like this here. So all the branches, they are just piercing the superior constrictor muscle to enter the lateral surface. Let's see the venous drainage. As I have told you in the previous picture, when we drew horizontal section, the paratonsillar veins, these are the veins which are draining part of the soft palate also, and they will drain the smaller veins draining the substance of the tonsil, make tonsillar vein, which will run into the paratonsillar space. So they are in that space, it is called as the paratonsillar vein or external palatine vein. Okay, remember, external palatine vein or paratonsillar vein, that is same. So it can drain into the pharyngeal venous plexus, which are present just outside the pharyngeal wall posteriorly. So into the pharyngeal plexus of veins or into the common facial vein, and then ultimately they drain into the jugular vein, internal jugular vein. Okay, so the paratonsillar vein, its position is also important because it is lying in the paratonsillar space, and while doing tonsillectomy, when the dissection is done in this space, while doing dissecting, it is very common cause of bleeding after tonsillectomy. Okay, so when we are removing this tissue, we can easily damage this vein, or especially after tonsillectomy, while removing the clot, this vein may get damaged. So that is cause of the venous bleeding after tonsillectomy. Let's see the nerve supply. The sensory supply is by the glossopharyngeal nerve and greater and the lesser palatine nerves. Remember the glossopharyngeal nerve, it is supplying the tonsil, which is also supplying the tympanic cavity. So whenever there is an inflammation of the tonsils, there can occur pain in the ear because of this referred nature of the pain. The supply is same by the glossopharyngeal nerve, so the referred pain can be felt in the ear when there is a enlarged and inflamed tonsils are there. Now about the lymphatic drainage, it is into the jugulo-digastric group of lymph nodes. So this is the main lymph node which drains the tonsil, uh, and then into the this is actually the upper group of the deep cervical lymph nodes. So the lymphatics from the tonsil drains into the jugulo-digastric group of lymph nodes. Now the applied anatomy, mostly we have discussed all of them, but I'll just enlist them again. Tonsillitis, which is the infection inflammation of the tonsils. This is the tonsil, which is reflected from the tonsillar bed like this to show the arteries which is penetrating the lateral aspect of the tonsillar tissue. So when they are inflamed, that condition is called as tonsillitis. Tonsillectomy is the procedure of taking out the tonsil from the tonsillar bed, taking care of all these blood vessels, especially the tonsillar branches of the arteries and paratonsillar vein present in the lateral aspect of the tonsil. Sometimes this tonsillitis, when it is extensive, it can involve the paratonsillar area also. In that case, condition, the paratonsillitis, is called as the quinsy. There occur abscess in the paratonsillar area called as quinsy. Okay. So the tonsillitis can involve paratonsillar area. So abscess in this area is called as quinsy, and this can lead to referred pain in the ear, as I've said in the previous part of the class, that referred pain is because of the sensory supply by the glossopharyngeal nerve, which also supplies the tympanic cavity. Loss of taste sensation can also occur because when the abscess or the involvement of the glossopharyngeal nerve, which can occur because of the severe edema in that area, that will lead to loss of sensation because of the involvement of ninth cranial nerve. Now a few words about the auditory tube or pharyngotympanic tube or eustachian tube. This is the tube which connects the tympanic cavity to the nasopharynx. It is made up of cartilage medially, and lateral portion is bony. The function of this tube is to equalize pressure on both the aspect of the tympanic membrane. Also helps in mucociliary clearance because its mucosa has cilia, and it helps also in protecting from the loud sound. The length of this tube is approximately 36 millimeter. If I have to draw this, then this is the middle cranial fossa, the pituitary fossa, or the sella turcica, the posterior ends of the turbinates, the hard palate and the soft palate, the upper portion of the arch of atlas. Then here will be the triangular opening of the pharyngotympanic tube. Okay, so remember over here, this is the tube opening is here. The rest of the tube I can make if I have to trace it further towards the tympanic cavity. Gradually it will become narrow and then again broaden and will open into the tympanic cavity. So this is tympanic cavity. Tympanic cavity. Okay, and this is the cartilaginous part of this. If I have to rub this, I'll rub it off here. Then this tube, as I've said, the medial lamina is thin medial lamina, thick thin lateral lamina, this anterior and lateral, and this is posteromedial part, which is thick, and the rest of the if it is deficient, then in that case it is completed by the fibrous tissue. So, and the direction of the tube, it is directed downwards, anteriorly and medially, from tympanic cavity to nasopharynx. Suppose this is the midline and the tympanic cavity somewhere here, then it is continuity from the anterior wall of the tympanic cavity towards the nasopharynx. Suppose this is the pharyngeal wall, so this would be the bony part, which is broad initially, narrow. This is isthmus, which is the narrowest part, and then this is the cartilaginous part opening into the nasopharynx, the lateral wall of the nasopharynx, the narrow isthmus, and then further broad the bony component. Okay, so this is 12 millimeter in length, and this one is 24 millimeter in length. So this is cartilaginous part, and this is bony. Okay, so total 36 millimeter. This tube makes angle of 45 degree with the sagittal plane. Okay, this is the sagittal plane, this angle is 45 degree, whereas make angle of 30 degree with the horizontal plane. So if this is declining downwards, so the angle with the horizontal, it is 30 degree, whereas angle with the sagittal plane, it is 45 degree. Remember this. Now the cartilaginous part, as I've said, is a triangular plate of cartilage, large posterior and medial lamina, whereas anterior and lateral lamina is thin, may be deficient, and completed by the fibrous tissue. The apex of this tube, this is called as the broader end, and this narrow portion is called as the apex of the tube, is in continuity with the bony part, and this narrow portion is called as the isthmus of the tube. The medial end is broad and it is protruding under the mucosa of the lateral nasopharyngeal wall, and it is called as torus tubarius. So this protruding cartilaginous end covered with the mucosa is called as torus tubarius. Okay, this is the pharyngeal orifice of the tube. So just above that we have torus tubarius, and this cartilaginous part of the tube is fixed in the petrous part of the temporal bone and greater wing of sphenoid. And the one more thing, the cartilaginous part and the bony part, they are not in same plane. This part is steeper, and that means it is going downwards much more as compared to the bony part. So there is an angulation between the two parts of the tube also. The bony part, which is 12 millimeter, extending from the anterior tympanic wall to the junction of the petrous temporal bone and the squamous temporal bone. The tube towards the tympanic cavity is lined by the cuboidal ciliated epithelium towards the middle ear, and the pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium towards the nasopharyngeal side. And it has got mucosal foldings also, which helps in better mucosal ciliary clearance. If you see the relations of the tube, we'll see that the salpingopharyngeus muscle is related inferiorly. It is going to join with the palatopharyngeus muscle and the stylopharyngeus muscle and gain attachment on the posterior lamina of the thyroid cartilage. Whereas posterior medial, it is related with the petrous temporal bone and levator velli palatini muscle. So it's posteriorly and medially on this aspect, it is going to be related with the levator velli palatini muscle, which will come and get attached onto the superior surface of the soft palate. Okay, whereas anterolaterally it is related with the tensor velli palatini muscle. Here it gives attachment to the tensor velli palatini muscle. This muscle separates the tube from otic ganglion, mandibular nerve, chorda tympani nerve, and the middle meningeal artery. So between the tube is separated by the tensor velli palatini. Sorry, tensor velli palatini muscle separates the tube from the otic ganglion. Okay, remember, it's otic ganglion, the mandibular nerve, and chorda tympani nerve, the chorda tympani, sorry, chorda tympani nerve, and the middle meningeal artery, right? So, chorda tympani nerve, middle meningeal artery, all these will be separated from the tube by tensor velli palatini muscle. The tube is supplied by the tubal artery, tubal branches from the ascending palatine artery, the ascending pharyngeal artery. So they will supply blood to the auditory tube, and the lymphatic drainage is into the deep cervical group of lymph nodes. Let's see what is the significance of having auditory tube, what it does. Auditory tube is not patent all the time. That means the opening is blocked most of the time, and it opens intermittently only during swallowing. When the soft palate get elevated and the lateral pharyngeal wall, they come closer, move towards each other, and the tube dilates only for 3 to 0.3 to 0.5 seconds. See, this is a very small window period in which the tube is open during swallowing, and that helps in balancing the air pressure between the oral cavity, nasopharynx, and on both the side of the tympanic membrane. One more thing, infection from the nasopharynx can easily be carried to the middle ear and is one of the common cause of frequent ear infection in children, because in children bony part is wider and shorter and the tube is more horizontal. Uh, so the infection can travel easily into the middle ear cavity. Normally, because of the obliquity of the tube, infection is not easily able to reach to the middle ear cavity. At higher altitude, the pressure outside the tympanic membrane decreases. That leads to change in the quality of sound perceived. So the treatment for that is swallowing, keep swallowing, which helps in opening the pharyngotympanic tube and helps in equalizing the pressure. In aircraft also, the ear distress occurs because of the difference in the pressure on each side of the tympanic membrane, and sucking and swallowing toffee or sweets helps in relieving the air pressure, which is unequal on the both the aspect of the tympanic membrane. Similarly, the middle ear infection are frequent because of the shorter, wider, as I've told you previously. This is the applied significance. Short, wide, and more horizontal pharyngotympanic tube in children can cause frequent middle ear infection, and it is treated by introducing air into the auditory tube if the tympanic membrane is retracted, or just by giving the medical treatment can relieve the discomfort when the infection is over. Blockade of the pharyngotympanic tube can cause middle ear infection, mainly serous otitis type of media. It's a collection of the pus in the middle ear cavity, and this the pressure in the tympanic, because of the pressure in the middle ear cavity, tympanic membrane can burst. Pharyngeal opening of the pharyngotympanic tube, it lies 1.5 centimeter posterior and slightly inferior to inferior turbinates. It is an important landmark for the procedure to be done on the nasopharyngeal area. So pharyngotympanic tube lies 1.5 centimeter behind or posteriorly, slightly inferior to the posterior end of inferior concha, and that's an important surgical landmark. So this is all about the tonsils and the auditory tube. So thank you so much.